Settlers of Catan is a turn-based strategy board game in which 3 to 4 players settle the island of Catan. The board is comprised of 6 hexagon types, 5 of which have number tokens on them. These number tokens represent a hex's resource producing capability. As the dice are rolled, players can collect resources. They can trade with each other, they can stockpile, they can rob each other, they can watch their civilizations grow or use skills in diplomacy to try and settle or conquer the meticulously crafted island of Catan. The island provide the necessary resources for the players to build settlements, cities, development cards, and acquire floating trophies, which are all worth victory points. Victory points are used to win the game. When a player accrues 10 victory points, they instantly win. My thesis for why I love this game so much, and I think you should play it, lies in 3 core principles. Firstly, the idea of balance. Secondly, the idea of social interaction. And thirdly, the idea of aesthetic. And I think all of these core tenets work together to create this harmony that is Catan. The way I define balance is a game's rule set and its capacity to promote equal and fair play balanced against the random number chance associated with certain parts of this game. Now, there's a lot of this in Catan, and I think it's really important to the game, both in the initial stage of the game during setup and subsequently the way that dice rolls affect the way players play with each other. In setup, there are hordes, there are number tokens, there are the way the resources are laid out and the position of the desert. And as the game goes on, there are chances for 7s to be rolled, or players will use development cards against you to steal from you. So there's constant tension in the game. There's this constant feeling that your position is not completely secure. The constant and looming threat of things like 7s, knight, trick development cards, and the capacity for floating trophies to be taken away from you. All examples of how the game can suddenly change quickly and force you to think differently. It's also incredibly hard to have long-term goals because of the structure. Because the game is constantly shifting, it's very hard to have a long-term goal. You can know that you're working towards something like longest road or largest army, which are things you do need to work towards because they both prescribe the acquisition of a large amount of things, be it knights or roads. However, they're both floating trophies, which means that someone who invests a little bit more than you can take them away, making these 2 victory points, which are both worth 20% of what you need to win the game. And this kind of insecure wildcard factor that's constantly floating around. Other parts of the rule set that I think are worth talking about are the way that trading works, the way that interpersonal trading works, and it's a fundamental premise of the game. Catan is almost completely defined by the other players you play with, the way that you interact with them, the way that you convince them to help you achieve your own goals. When one plays Catan, one is compelled to interact with other people, because if you don't, the alternative is stagnation. The alternative is not growing, is not playing, and fundamentally it's losing. People who don't expand in this game, who aren't constantly changing what their objective is and constantly changing the way that they look at the board and the cards in their hand, will not win. Because being stagnant in this game means they're not reacting to the behavior of the dice or the behavior of your co-players. If you don't interact in a social way, if you're not, 1, constantly observing what your opponents are doing, and 2, not constantly reassessing what your objective is, it's very hard for you to be competitive in the game. So I think it spurs an interesting balance of practical, logical conditions versus soft social skills. The game is beyond beautiful. It makes you want to play every time you take the pieces out. The pieces are these painted wooden blocks that feel like they were made by someone in a German workshop somewhere. The artwork on the board is meticulously done, that the cards look like real resources that a civilization would actually use to thrive. It feels right that there's a longest road card. It's something that feels like it's momentous in the civilization. It's something that feels like it belongs. It feels justified by The artwork, everything in the game constantly reasserts its own validity. And that's what makes the rule set so convincing. Because you believe the game and you believe what's happening on the board, you're more willing to deal with some of the more nasty rules. Like the fact that the robber will stop you from accessing your resources. My point about the aesthetic of the game is that you feel as though the civilization is a representation of you. You feel as though when you're negotiating with your friend across a table, but you're also asking for lumber for your people. It makes it feel as though the lumber that was acquired through hard toil will actually be used to help the civilization grow, to help new lands be discovered and new strategies to be unlocked. You feel like you're consistently incentivized by the board to expand and grow, but you also feel justified by the artwork and the gorgeous rendering of the capacity and abundance of Catan. And its beauty consistently makes you feel as though your civilization is your own, as though you may not even win, but if you get 8 victory points and you put your people in cities and you find a library and a palace and you have a strong standing army, it feels like enough. And this subtle coalescence of the balance of the game in its logical and practical rule set versus the soft social interaction that allows for the game to be played creates an incredibly balanced experience that's tied together by the aesthetic of the board. It's a gorgeous game and I'd absolutely recommend you play it. Try and get a friend to bring it to a dinner party that you're going to, or go and get it from your local bookstore. Settlers of Catan is one of the best commercially available board games on the market today. It's fair, it's engaging, it's fun, it's beautiful, it's carefully crafted and incredibly balanced. I couldn't recommend it more. Like it if you did, and subscribe to my channel if you're interested in what I can do. If you have any feedback, feel free to leave it in the comments. I'm always looking to grow. Thanks for watching.